is the Marketing Mindshift podcast with Stephen Newland.
Welcome to the Modern Marketer Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Newland. I've got a very special guest today with me, Mr. Chandler Bolt. Chandler Bolt is the CEO of Self-Publishing School, selfpublishing.com, and the author of 6 best-selling books, including his most recent book titled Published. Self-Publishing School is an Inc. 5000 company the last 2 years in a row. It's one of the 5,000 fastest-growing private companies in the U.S. Wow, Chandler, that's awesome. Chandler is also the host of the 7-Figure Principles podcast. Did I say that right? 7 Figures Principles?
Yep.
And the Self-Publishing School podcast. Through his books, podcasts, YouTube channels, and Self-Publishing School, he's helped thousands of people just like you write their first book. So without further ado, welcome, Mr. Chandler.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So before we dive into what everybody knows you for on writing a book, let's briefly talk about the current crisis our world is facing, right? What have been some of the takeaways that you've experienced and learned during this season? What new or improved disciplines or habits that you've developed during the season that you want to continue? And also, have you identified anything that you might want to cut?
Yeah. Oh, so much stuff that we want to cut. So, I mean, for us, we're in a time of it's literally our theme for the whole quarter is getting back to the basics. I think, you know, it's just like a lot of other small, medium-sized businesses. I mean, you should only be focused on one of two things, either getting customers or making customers happier.
Absolutely.
And so our version of that is getting students signed up or getting students results. And so it's helped us, I think, in a sense, like we're just trimming everything that doesn't lead to one of those two results.
Just refining your focus.
Yeah, exactly. And getting laser focused on those two things and getting back to the basics and, you know, cutting a lot of unnecessary expenses and trying to just tighten up our focus. And really, as a result of that, I mean, we've had a record-breaking month. It's one of the best months that we've had in company history. And so kind of the big thing, if I were to put it on a bumper sticker, the big thing that I've been telling my team is, how do we get better because this happened? Not how do we get better in spite of this happening? And so I just believe that, you know, for a lot of small, medium-sized businesses, I mean, we are going to get better because this happened. And so, but it's your job as a leader, your job as a CEO, or wherever at in your organization to ask that question is, how can we get better because this is happening? And how do we take this and help us to focus? And so that's what we've been trying to do.
I love it. Do you have any specific examples of those takeaways that you've taken personally in your experience in your business that maybe some of our audience could apply in theirs?
Yeah. So, I mean, one great example is when all the uncertainty kind of started happening, it was, oh man, there was 2 ways we could have went. It was, okay, people aren't, you know, we're an education company. We help people write and publish books. It could be easy to say like, oh man, people just aren't going to spend money on that. Like that seems like a frivolous, unnecessary, non-essential expense that just like might be one of the first things to go. And, you know, some people look at a book as, I look at it as a really great way to grow your business. Some people look at it as a hobby. And either way, people are probably going to cut that spending. But instead we said, hey, what if we believe the opposite to be true, which is, and so let's look for how is this going to make us better? And what we found was, well, actually the biggest objection that we've had for years is I don't have time to write a book. Well, guess what? Now we have a bunch of people with time on their hands. And, you know, you start looking and you see that Isaac Newton discovered calculus and the fundamentals of gravity in quarantine, you know, and Shakespeare wrote some of his best work, King Lear and Macbeth, in quarantine. So you start looking, you start finding those things. And so then we start, how can we shift our messaging? And we gave away, thousands of books for free. And then that actually generated $100,000 in business. So like, it's just like looking for the kernel of opportunity and what's happening and not taking advantage of what's happening because we want to be empathetic to where people are at. And it's not like we're going out and buying up bucket loads of hand sanitizer and then sell them for $50 a bottle. Like that's not what I'm recommending. I know there's people out there doing that, but it's, hey, how do we serve people? How do we add value and shift this in a way that speaks to where people are at, but is also using this to help us grow. And then it's just, I mentioned tighten our focus. I mean, we have really tightened our focus big time, and you make tough decisions. You're speaking more directly. You're setting more clear goals. It's like, hey, just communicating clearly. If we don't tighten things up, we're going to have to cut a person or two. So like, I don't want to do that. Let's row in the same direction and better execute on what we're doing here.
I love that. And you mentioned, some of the greatest works that we know today were written during periods of quarantine or plague or whatnot. And so, that really brings up an interesting point. As entrepreneurs, we always have ideas going and wheels turning and things like that. And maybe a lot of people out there have an idea for a book. Maybe some of them know what they want to write about, but maybe some of them's got so many ideas they know they've got it in them to write a book, but they don't know where to get started. Like, how do you help coach people choose a topic to write a book on? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So, one of the first questions I ask is, what's that thing that you know about that you get asked about all the time? Or maybe it's the broken record conversation that you just keep having over and over and over again. And so for business owners, it's probably what's the thing that in every onboarding conversation or every sales conversation, like you just keep repeating the same things. Yeah. And the best way to expedite and improve the onboarding process or the sales process is to write a book on that thing. And then now all of a sudden, you're increasing your conversion rate from a sales perspective. You're decreasing the amount of time that you're spending onboarding a customer or a new client. All those things, so for most people, that's the best place to start. Or like a little bit different is what's a problem that all of your target customers have that you know how to solve, and write a book that solves that problem. And that helps them begin the conversation with you to ultimately end up doing business with you.
Excellent. So along those lines, but I want to shift gears just slightly. And let's briefly talk about how you got inspired just to get started in this line of work and coaching others to reach their dreams of writing a book.
Yeah. So I wrote and published a couple books, and it was I did not think I would be here. So I was, I'm a C-level English student, college dropout. I hated reading and writing, and I certainly didn't want to write books. But I learned some things, and I wanted to teach that to others. And so I wrote and published a book, and then it did decently well. And then people started asking about it. And then I said, okay, why don't I teach some of these folks what I learned? And then they did well. And then we just kind of, ever since then, it's just kind of been off to the races and changing lives through writing and publishing books kind of as the mechanism of that.
Great. What's the biggest holdup from people that they know they have this dream in them, or they've had these thoughts for a long time? Like, what's their holdup from getting started? What do you find in your experience? Yeah,
from getting started, I think people tell themselves that they don't have the time. I think also people think there's imposter syndrome as who am I to write this? And, I don't know if I'm qualified and all that, but really it's making your first progress. Yeah. And the journey, I'm sure I know you've written books, and it's like that, the rough draft, that's the hard part, right? And so for us, we try to get people laser focused on getting your rough draft done. And until you get your rough draft done, nothing else matters. And once you get your rough draft done, you start to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and you start to believe that this is possible. So just really like laser focusing people on that. And that's what we found helps kind of people get started quickly and start making meaningful progress.
And you kind of hit the nail on the head earlier. I knew that I always had books within me, but like you said, it's like, who am I? And trying to be humble, but yet we know we have information to share to help others. Mm-hmm. What specific? There's a lot of people out there watching this podcast, and they're probably on the fence with the same concerns that I had. And like you mentioned, like, how do you get them past, like, it's how this is a tool to help others. And, it's not about your ego necessarily.
Yeah. The best way the best analogy I could give is kind of like I was in the Scouts growing up. And I remember my Scoutmaster, he said, just kind of jokingly, he said, when we're out camping, if you run into a bear, you don't have to be faster than the bear. You just have to be faster than your friend. Right. And if you're faster than your friend, then the bear's going to get your friend and not you. And right. I think the similar thing applies here is like, you don't have to know everything. You just have to know a little bit more than the person that you're teaching. Right. And in a lot of cases, someone might not resonate with a Tony Robbins or Gary Vaynerchuk or something like that, but they resonate with you because they relate to you. And so they wouldn't read that person's book, but they'll read your book because they either know of or can relate to you. And now all of a sudden, that's the one book that they read all year. Because most people don't read a lot of books, which is very sad. I think the average American reads like 1 or 2 books a year. And so you can be that gateway to them actually reading that, but then also you can connect to them in a meaningful way and not in a way that's like, oh, they're way out there. Like, this is not relevant to me. I can't do this. I'm not Tony Robbins. I'm not that person. But I think you can resonate, and you just have to know a little bit more than the person that you're teaching.
Great points. I think you hit the nail on the head on multiple fronts there. One thing I often tell my team is progress over perfection. It's forward progress. And I know Simon Sinek talks a lot about that in his book, The Infinite Game, where, a lot of us are used to finite games, like basketball or baseball, where there's a set time period, there's a set number of players on the field, there's a set number of rules. And in business, we don't have that. It's an infinite game. The players are changing, the product may change, all these variables. And so it's always, like you said, about I can't talk today. Progress over perfection and moving the ball forward. We can perfection never exists because we can always learn, grow, improve, and tweak. So I think that's a big thing that I see on my end is people get so hung up on the perfection myth that sometimes they don't even move forward because they get so hung up. And then two, you also brought up a good point where people might not relate to Tony Robbins. Maybe they relate to a Dave Ramsey or a Grant Cardone or someone like that. And so I know that for a fact, that's why a lot of clients are drawn to our business, because we don't, our approach is we don't like to sugarcoat things. We don't like to be a yes man. We don't like to necessarily tell you what you want to hear. We tell you what you need to hear. And we kind of give you that gut level honesty. Like I mentioned prior to our interview today, we're big believers in to be clear is to be kind, and clarity, And so the opposite is true. When we're unclear to our target audience, our customers, we might be thinking that we're doing them a favor by being polite or kind. And don't get me wrong, customer service and those things are important. But at the same time, when we're looking for self-improvement and self-awareness, we need that gut level honesty. And so that's why, we're going to attract a certain crowd that others aren't going to attract, and they're going to attract people that we're not going to attract. And so the good news is there's room in the marketplace for all of us. If
right. 100%.
So moving on, we talked about some of the hangups that people have. They know they want to do it, but they don't know where to get started or what to write about or other hangups. A lot of people right now, and you kind of highlighted this a little bit earlier, but I want to go a little bit more in depth. A lot of people think the current coronavirus quarantine is a horrible time to write a book, right? And so, like you said, some people might think it's a luxury or a hobby or whatever. People like you and I see it as a great time to, we've got some extra time to learn and self-improve and work on strategies to grow our business and others' businesses. Like, why do you think it's a perfect time to write a book right now in this current crisis that we're all navigating through?
Yeah, I mean, we've got the time. It's are you going to use this time to watch Netflix or are you going to waste this time, or are you going to use it to plant seeds for your future? And I think that's really what it comes down to is how do we use this time to get better because this is happening, not in spite of this happening, right. and really use this time to get better. And so I think, just like a lot of the greatest work was created during times like these, I think there's a lot of opportunity. A lot of people are joking about how there's going to be a bunch of babies born 9 months from now, the quarantine kids, all that stuff. Well, I believe that there's going to be a bunch of book babies born over the next month, 2 months, 3 months. I mean, we had 53 books published last month. We've already had 50 books published this month. I mean, we're doing a shelter in place writing challenge right now with our community. And I think it's been like 9 or 10 days. And last I checked, which this was yesterday, so it's definitely way up from that. There was already 1.4 million words have been written. Our community, it's just awesome seeing so many people rally towards this and using this time to get better and using this time to plant seeds in their future. It's been really inspiring to see.
I love that. And as I kind of highlighted earlier, I just recently finished up my new book, The Marketing Mindshift, that'll be coming out here anytime now. And I know it took me a little bit longer than originally our target was 90 days, but it took a little longer than that. And that's fine. But I know that your big thing is you really try to target 90 days. Tell me a little bit about why you target 90 days.
Yeah, it's kind of like businesses operate on a quarter cycle, right? We plan in quarters and 90-day sprints. I think we're just big on achieving that goal in 90 days. And I've seen it happen because I've done it. I mean, I think one of my first books, it was something like 75 days from idea to published. And so we just believe in that model. And sure, like a lot of students will take 3 to 9 months. But either way, I mean, traditional publishing, you're taking 2 years. Right. And then even self-publishing for a lot of people is they take years and years, so they dream about it for a decade and they don't actually make any progress. And so our goal is to shortcut that. And I believe in Parkinson's law, which states that an object will swell in proportion to the amount of time, money, energy, whatever that you give it. So it'll fill the container. And so even if you traditionally publish, it's like most people write that book in the last 2 or 3 months, right before the deadline where they got to ship it off to their publisher. What if we just shrunk that for them? And what if we just said, hey, you've got a 90-day window. And so there's urgency, there's continual progress. And I think it makes for a better book because you're staying focused on a singular topic. And you're moving through the process quickly and iterating and improving it. And
just for the sake of clarity for our listeners out there, I'm assuming you have some kind of framework and you guide them along the way. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So we're an online education company. So we're not a publisher. So we don't publish it for you. We also don't take a cut of your royalties. So you get to keep 100% of the royalties that you earn. But we help people through the process. So kind of how we like to work is it's funny. It's very in line with your philosophy of results-based marketing. It's kind of a results-based education in a sense of like we have what we call the milestones. And we flip those milestones at the front of the whole experience. So it's like, okay, get your mind map and outline done, get your rough draft done, get the editing done, book production. So our goal is to help people move through those milestones. And then we have the online education component. We pair them up with a coach that works with them. We have a Rolodex of outsourcers. So, cover designers, editors, formatters. We've negotiated exclusive prices with all those folks. And so we give them the resources and then we guide them and hold them accountable throughout the process to keep moving through the process, keep achieving those milestones. And with the goal being, we're going to save them a ton of time. We're going to save them a ton of money in the process. And then hopefully we'll be able to help them make a whole lot more money by doing the book the right way and structuring it in a way that's going to drive leads, sales, and referrals for your business.
Awesome. And you may have just answered my next question, but I just want to clarify in case there's anything additional you want to add for our viewers out there. I know for myself and more people that I see out there are really preferring self-publishing versus the pre-internet days or early internet days to where it was the thing to have a publisher. Do you want to talk about some of the benefits to self-publishing other than what you already highlighted?
Yeah, so we've got a really great post on our blog and like a PDF that's like comprehensive that goes more in depth that might be helpful for people. But kind of the long and short of it is self-publishing. You keep 100% of the control. You get to move faster. You keep more of the royalties. Like that's a big thing. And either way you go, the publisher's not going to market the book for you. So you're going to have to market the book either way. And so I think that's a big misconception. And really, so for 99% of people, self-publishing is a much better path and it's becoming the preferred option for most authors. Now, if you're Gary Vaynerchuk or someone like that and you can get a massive advance, that's pretty much the only time that it makes sense to go traditionally published. Now, the caveat is that you're going to have to probably spend that advance on marketing the book. And if you don't sell enough copies of that book, they'll claw back that advance or make you buy books. That's like a hidden, little known thing about the publishing world. But really, unless you can get a huge advance, and or like the only other things are distribution. So you can get, in bookstores and stuff like that. Now, I just did a podcast interview the other day with Pat Flynn on the Self-Publishing School podcast, and he talked about how he got his self-published book in airport bookstores and Barnes & Noble. So it's definitely not impossible. It's just harder than going traditionally published.
Right.
And then the only other benefit is like if you're trying to hit New York Times list, which that's another podcast episode in itself. It's not a worthwhile goal. It's an editorial list they pick. So it's not a true bestseller list. The USA Today bestseller list and the Wall Street Journal bestseller list, those are true bestseller lists based on units sold. But the New York Times is editorial. So it's just what they choose. And so a lot of people, I think in their mind, they have like, all right, New York Times bestseller, but it doesn't matter how many books you sell. Yeah, it does to a certain extent, but then it's just editorial. So it's not really, in my opinion, a reason to go traditionally published because it's just a bad goal.
All great points. So now I'm going to get to the real question that everybody's been wanting to know the entire time. Office, bedroom, or car? Which one do you clean first?
Oh, man. I got to go office. Clean office, clean mind. Mind. I can get good work done.
I love it. All right. Well, that's all my questions. Do you have any final words of wisdom or bonus tips for our viewers out there that are considering writing a book?
Yeah, I would just say get started. Get started. Start writing. Like take 15 minutes as soon as this podcast is over and create a mind map and about what you would write about, and start thinking about the ideas. And I think you'll really be surprised at how much knowledge is in that noggin of yours. It's way more than you think. Yeah. So start on the mind map, and then we've got a really cool tool called the Book Outline Template Generator. It's on our site. We've got an article on how to write a book, and it's embedded in there. Basically you click a couple buttons and it spits out a 25-page Google Doc that's literally like the title page, the copyright page, the table of contents, the chapter headings, and you just copy that and then start typing inside the Google Doc. So use that, get started, get your mind map done, and get right. And let's use this time again just to plant seeds in our future and to make progress on your book.
And remind our viewers one last time on where they can get your latest book at.
Yeah. So if you go to self-publishingschool.com/published, like I just published a book, you can get a copy of the book for free. All you have to do is pay shipping and handling. So it's on the site. If you go there, you'll find it. It's my book, Published: The Proven Path from Blank Page to Published Author.
Awesome tips. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it from the man himself, Chandler Bolt. If you guys think you have an idea for a book inside of you, definitely take his tips. Go check out his website. Chandler, I want to thank you personally and honor you for taking your time to share with our audience on tips to help grow their business and really just get their passion outside of them and share it with others that can relate to them, as we talked about. And so I just want to thank you and honor you publicly. You're welcome back anytime in the future. And we just want to thank you again.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I love what you're doing. I love your guys' philosophies of results-based marketing. I think it's something that way more people need to be paying attention to and thinking about in your marketing. So love what you guys are doing, and thanks for having me on.
And for our viewers out there, again, we'll put all the links on the screen so you can link to Chandler's stuff, you can link to our stuff, and we'll see you on the next podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Marketing Mindshift podcast. If you're enjoying learning from Steven on this podcast, please be sure to show your support by rating, reviewing, and subscribing on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Please make sure to also share this podcast with your friends on social media. If you're looking for more resources to help take your business growth skills to the next level, or for a copy of Steven's book, you can find that at getstevensbook.com. Thanks again for tuning into the Marketing Mindshift podcast with Steven Newland.
Order your copy of the Marketing Mindshift at getstevensbook.com and follow us on social media at Synergy Creative and at Steven Newland.